Hey everybody, welcome once again to Transform Church Online. I can't wait to get into the message and hear what our speaker has for us today. Before we do, please do us a favor by sharing this broadcast on your social media platform so we can reach others with these life transforming messages. This is as simple as clicking the thumbs up icon on Facebook, and if you're joining us on YouTube, please do the same, and also don't forget to hit that subscribe button. We would love to see you in person, so please visit us at 88 Agar Drive, and that's in Truganina in the western suburbs of Melbourne. Now, as we get into the message, feel free to engage with us and share your thoughts on the message, or just say hi and let us know where you are joining us from. Now, as we get into the message, feel free to engage with us and share your thoughts on the message, or just say hi and let us know where you are joining us from. Let's jump right into it now and join me as I welcome our speaker for today, Pastor Gregory J. Williams, as he brings us the message titled, Free to See.
Paper walls. And today we are on episode number 3. And if you haven't caught up on any of the messages, you can actually go onto YouTube, Facebook, or you can do a podcast. You know, a great way to listen is in your car, on the train, when you're going to work, from work, whatever it is, catch up on our podcast. It's a great way of just strengthening your week and encouraging you through the week. So listen on that. But as I said, episode 3, paper walls. If you're watching online, we want to welcome you as well. Thank you for joining us. Let us know wherever you're joining from. Let us know how you are, what's happening in your part of the world. We'd love to connect with you as well. So paper walls is a series about things in our life that stop us from achieving what we can and should be doing, right? It's about moving beyond the things that hold us back. There are a few things in our world that we love to carry and should carry from one season to next, 1 month to the next, 1 year to the next, and that's good friends. You know, it's always good to have good friends. It's good to have good habits, good relationships. It's always good to carry that from one season to the next. But there's some things that we should definitely leave behind. That because they don't actually serve us well. They don't help us move forward. They don't build our momentum. They don't make our life better. You know, and it's not worth carrying from one season to the next. And we should get in the habit of leaving this one thing we're talking about in this series. And those are, everyone, excuses. Excuses don't help us at all. They actually don't benefit us. They keep us from achieving what we could and should be achieving. And as we said, paper walls are excuses that masquerade as reasons, as becauses. And our reasons are not really reasons, and our becauses are not really becauses, because we just put them up like paper walls, and from a distance, a paper wall looks like an actual obstacle. But it has no weight, it has no substance. It looks like something's there, but there actually isn't anything there at all. And to be honest, there's a fine line between an excuse and a reason. One always disguises itself as the other, that we actually present as actual reasons. So today, I want to talk to you about the topic about being free to see. Free to see. I remember as a child breaking some of my grandmother's wonderful ornaments. She used to have all these ornaments on her table. She loved them. And sometimes when I'm being a little bit more rambunctious, we knocked one over and it broke. You know, and so later they came around and they asked us, like, did you break this? And of course I said, it wasn't me. If someone else, it wasn't me. And I'm sure you had a very similar experience. Something in your world that you did maybe when you were a child or even as an adult, and someone asked you, did you do this? And you were like, no, it wasn't me at all. Right? I don't know the answer to this question, but maybe you do. I'm not sure when we begin lying to ourselves. Maybe, I think it's probably earlier than we think. And more importantly, when do we stop lying to ourselves? It's like that old saying, how do you know a politician is lying? His lips are moving, right? It doesn't take long to get good at lying. When you're at least 10-year-old, at least 10, you're probably an expert at lying. You're just making up all kinds of things, you know. And especially as you're sitting here today as Christ followers, I would hope that as you decided to follow Jesus, that you stop lying. But to be honest, I know that's not true. And let's be honest, the person we lie to the most is ourselves. We often get so good at catching other people's lies, but we're not so good at catching our own lies. We're great to spot other people's lies when they say it, and we point it out, but it's so difficult to look in the mirror and find ourselves lying. We lie to others to preserve something, right? To preserve our dignity, to preserve our image, maybe to preserve our insecurities, whatever it may be. And I'm not condoning this, right? I'm not condoning this, but we should never lie to anyone about anything. But lying to other people is understandable. Again, I'm not condoning it. But lying to ourselves, it's confusing, right? It's confusing because who's lying to who? How many selves do we have? And if you're listening to this and saying, well, I don't lie to myself, maybe you just did. And the reason you lied to yourself and didn't know it is because we've become so good at lying to ourselves that we don't even recognize when we do it. And one of the reasons we're so good at lying to ourselves, which is really just deceiving ourselves, we're deceiving ourselves, but one of the reasons is we don't actually call the lies lies because we dignify them, right? We dignify them, we call them something else, we call them reasons. We call them reasons because we want to be reasonable. We're all reasonable human beings. And so we want to be reasonable, right? So when you decide to say something you shouldn't or do something you shouldn't, we give ourselves reasons why we did it. And these are just reality, excuses, and lies. So we're all experts at lying to ourselves and deceiving ourselves, and we only have ourselves to blame. The reason I was late for work was because there was traffic, right? But I did get up a bit late. I pressed the snooze button a few times. Then I scrolled through Facebook, and then I went through Instagram, and I went through a rabbit hole on Instagram, and the next thing I know, it was an hour later, but it's traffic. That's what I'm sticking with. I'm late because it's traffic. That's the real reason that I'm late. You all have a reason why you did and didn't do something, right? Here's something to think about. The reason you give yourself perhaps is not the real reason at all. Because the real reason is something else entirely. And here's the crazy part. Maybe the actual reason is a secret that you're keeping from yourself. To keep you from having to face the truth about yourself. And the reality is we all do it. So I'm not here to tell you, I'm saying all of us do it. And so instead of telling ourselves the truth, we make stuff up, we manufacture excuses, and we build paper walls. And we disguise our reasons as actually something that is holding something, but it's just a paper wall. It doesn't hold anything. So maybe, just maybe, to set yourself free, you need to call it like it is. Because here's the truth. The people around you know when you're lying. Right? They know when you've bought your own lies and given yourself reasons and becauses, and they know it's just an excuse. And the reason they know is because you know when they're lying. They see it for what it is, just a paper wall. So today, and we just need to be honest, not just with the people around us, but with ourselves first. So we can really identify that many, many, many of our paper walls are just excuses that are actually holding us back. So here's a question that we're asking through this series. Is it possible? Are you willing to consider? Are you open to the possibility? Are you willing to explore? Is it possible that you're missing out on life because you have walled yourself in? Is it possible that you're living behind a paper wall that you've bought into, that you've lied to yourself about, that you believe that are actually real obstacles and you can't move beyond them because you've put that up in your life? And the reality is that you've hemmed yourself in, you've kept things out, you've kept people out, you've kept relationships out, and your health out, and your outlook out. Because you've given yourself reasons. So is it possible you are hiding behind self-imposed, lie-infested excuses? It's real quiet, right? The real concern is, as we said before, a single excuse can become a king in our life. A boss in your life, a ruler in your life, a tyrant. And here's something to consider. Excuses are not silos, right, that live within the reason you gave it. They don't just exist in the area you want it to exist in. They leak into every other single area of our life. Excusing one area of unhealth in our life is going to affect every other area and lead to an unhealthy life. It's not going to stay where you want it to stay. Everything is connected. Your life is connected. You cannot confine an excuse to one area and think it's just going to affect this one area I'm talking about. No, it affects every single area of your life. Life is not that way where it just exists in a silo. Making excuses financially will affect your relationships. It will affect your health. It will affect your mental state. It will affect every single area of your life. It all flows together. So maybe there's a single excuse you have made for so long that it's affecting your entire life and keeping you from moving forward relationally, stunting your health, hindering your future, affecting your faith, affecting your peace. So think about this for a second. Is it possible that you've taken an excuse and turned it into an actual reason of why you do or why you don't do something? And as we said previously, there is a relationship. That's why we're talking about this. There's a relationship between your ability to follow Jesus and your willingness to push through your paper walls. Because we cannot follow excuses and follow Jesus at the same time. Because one always rules. One always has authority. And this is so crucial for us to understand, because when you follow Jesus through the Gospels, when you follow Jesus through Mark and Matthew and Luke, and when you read John, do you know what you discover about Jesus? Do you know what you see Jesus doing? Jesus is always bringing light to dark places. He was constantly leading people out of darkness, their personal darkness, into the light. But the problem is today, as we look at this, light can be frightening. Light can be terrifying because it shines a spotlight on areas we don't want to. Light shining in the dark places can be threatening. It can be scary. It can be embarrassing because it forces us to admit that we're really afraid. We're forced to admit that we've just made excuses, that why you won't and why you can't and why you couldn't and why you shouldn't. And the truth is because I'm afraid. I'm insecure. I'm terrified what I might feel like or what I might discover if I pull down my paper wall, if I admit that it's just an excuses that I've been giving for all these years. It's terrifying. Light can be terrifying, but light can be liberating as well. Lies, especially the ones you tell yourself, always hold us back and leave you in the dark. Let me tell you how you know this is true. We watch people at home, at work, in your family, your husband, your wife, your kids, and we see them making excuses. And here's what you think, but are often afraid to say, because this is what goes through your mind. Can't you see what you're doing to your marriage? Can't you see what they're doing with their kids? Can't you see what they're doing to themselves? Can't you see how your behavior is affecting your kids? Can't you see what you're doing to your health? Can't you see what you're doing to your finances? Can't you see what you're doing to your future? Can't you see what you're doing to your reputation? This is what we think. This is the words, the actual words that we use in our minds that we're thinking about. And we've all thought this, right? And we wish sometimes that we could walk up to someone and tell them that. Can't you see what you're doing to our marriage? Why do you think, though, that we think these things? Because the reality is they can't see. They just can't see. It's like they're wandering around in darkness and they just can't see. And if we had the courage or the relationship, we would sit down and tell them, I wish you could see what your behavior is doing to our kids. I wish you could see how your attitude is affecting your relationships. I wish you could see what you're doing is affecting your reputation. That's what we'd actually sit down and tell them. I wish you could see. I wish you could see. I wish you could see. Again, they can't see. And if you point it out, guess what they're going to do? They're going to run to their reasons, which are actually excuses in disguise. The reason is this. It would be fun to talk about other people, right? But what's true about them is true about us. What's true about them is true about you. They can't see it, and neither can you. Other people see it, just as you see it in other people. And this is why, when you follow Jesus through the Gospels, he presents us with an invitation that is just so powerful, it is actually life-changing. When you hear Christians or Jesus followers talk about how Jesus changed their life, this is what they're talking about. This is what they're saying. In fact, you think about how Jesus changed your life, this is what you're actually going to explain. So lies hold you back, and the flip side of that is that truth sets you free. How amazing is this that 2,000 years ago, this is the very point that Jesus is making. And he makes this point right after he makes this very over-the-top statement. It seems kind of very outlandish, right? This statement he makes about himself. And here's where the conversation begins. Jesus is teaching, and John, of course, is writing all this stuff down. And this is what Jesus actually says. This is what he says. You ready for it? Yeah. I am the light of the world. And you think, who says that? Who walks around making those kinds of statements? Do you? No wonder some people shook their heads, smirked, and walked off. Because this is a very outlandish statement. Think about the context of what Jesus is saying. They're like, yeah, right, you are the light of the world. And before we write Jesus off, like some of them did, what if that is really true? Think about this. What if Jesus really came to lead us out of darkness and into light? What if Jesus came to lead everyone, including every generation, including you and me? What if Jesus really came to lead us out of darkness and into light? What if he came to light up our excuses, expose them for what they truly are, so you can actually be what God called you to be, that you can be all that you should be, that you can fulfill the potential that God knew that was already in you, that he created you to do, he created you to fulfill. And get on the other side of your paper walls, instead of living hemmed in, frozen, paralyzed, not able to do anything, that you can actually be free to do what God made you to do. Consider this, especially if you've made a decision to follow Jesus. What if Jesus really is the light of the world? And then he says this, whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but have the light of light. Jesus is actually saying, I want to light up the dark places. Look, I want to lead you through your personal darkness into the light. I want to light up your world. I want to lead you to a place that is beyond paper walls, beyond your excuses, beyond your reasons, because your becauses, because I see what you're really capable of. But to do that, it's not enough just to sing songs about me. It's not enough to admire me. It's not enough to believe in me. It's not enough to just show up one day of the week. You have to follow me. Right? Because I'm going to lead you out of darkness into light. Not just come and sit down, but follow me. That's what he's saying. Because I'm taking you somewhere. I'm taking you out of your darkness into light. And it's the men and women who actually followed Jesus that turned the world upside down. It's the men and women who followed Jesus, not just admired Jesus, not just sang about Jesus, but followed Jesus that shaped civilization. So in this audience, when Jesus was actually saying this, it was the first century. And there were all kinds of people there listening to what Jesus was saying. And of course, there were the religious leaders of the day listening to Jesus. And John, who is documenting this, tells us, this is what he says to the Pharisees. The Pharisees said this. The Pharisees challenged Jesus. They challenged him. And they said, here you are appearing as your own witness. Your testimony is not valid. They're just trying to write Jesus off. They're saying, you can't say that about yourself. You're claiming things that you just can't prove. It's just not true. There's no way for you to prove what you're saying is true. You are crazy, claiming that you are the light of the world. But the crowd, they didn't leave because they suspected something about Jesus. Later in that conversation, he says this, which is just so powerful, right? Jesus says, if you hold to my teaching, you are really my disciples. If you hold to my teaching, which means it's conditional. Conditional means it's a conditional clause, which means that is dependent upon what comes before. If you, then something happens, right? So Jesus says, if you remain in my teaching, if you focus on, if you organize your life around me, if you will do what I'm teaching you, then and only then you are really my disciples, my learners, or my followers. Not just showing up, but if you really hold on to my teaching, follow my teaching. And if you do what I'm asking you to do and embrace what I've asked you to embrace, and if you follow my teaching, that means you are truly my follower, then and only then comes this statement, which we love to quote. Then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. Then you'll recognize what's true. Then you'll quit making excuses. Then you'll quit rationalizing. Then you'll quit resisting. Then you'll receive and know the truth and have this light bulb moment in your life and go, oh my goodness, my whole life I've been hiding behind these paper walls, behind these becauses, and they're not even real reasons. They're just paper walls. In that moment, if you follow me and become my disciple, you're going to know the truth, and it will set you free. It will set you free. Are you ready for this? To see. It will set you free to see yourself the way God sees you. To see yourself, the potential that God put in you. To see your family the way God sees your family. To see you through God's eyes. To see you the way that you are. To see God the way He truly is. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will, you hear this again, they will see God. Jesus says, I am the light of the world. Not in some mystic way, not in some ethereal way, not in some intangible way. I want to be the light of your world, and I want to be the light in your world. And here's the big if you follow me, you will discover the truth, and it will set you free. Coming to church is not going to set you free. I'm glad you're here, but sitting in a row is not going to set you free. If you follow Jesus, that's when you get set free. And you'll begin to see your paper walls exactly for what they are. So do you know how his audience responds to this amazing statement? Especially the ones who consider themselves to be the religious ones, the ones that claim to know God. Do you know how they respond? They begin making excuses. It's unbelievable. Here's what the Pharisees and the teachers of the law said. Because they were trying to keep people from actually following Jesus and listening to Jesus. And so they answered Jesus. This is what they said. What? Free? You're going to set us free? We are Abraham's descendants and have never been slaves to anyone. How can you say that we shall be free? You can't set us free. There's nothing to set us free from. Yeah. And this is the most ridiculous statement. If you understand anything about history or the history of Israel, you would know that this is an extremely inaccurate statement. When they said this, they were currently living under Roman occupation. They had a Roman governor. People, who are you living under? Rome? Who's your governor? Pilate. And you don't think you're slaves? Oh no, we're not slaves. And before the Romans, it was the Seleucians and the Babylonians and the Egyptians, and it goes on, and nations that enslaved Israel. So the whole idea of them saying that they've never been slaves it's just so ridiculous. And it's easy to criticize, especially when you know the facts, right? Yes. But we are often just as guilty. If I came along and said to you, you are a slave to your excuses. You are a prisoner of your excuses. You are walled in behind your paper walls. You are a slave. You would sit there and think, oh, not me. You'd fold your arms and say, I've never been a slave. And then you just start making excuses of why you are. And we're tempted, right? We're tempted to say the same thing they said. Here's what they said. I don't know what you're talking about, Jesus. I've never been a slave to anyone or anything. And that's exactly how we feel, right? I've never been a slave of anything. I'm living in 2023. I've never been a slave of anyone and anything. And Jesus, what do you mean you're going to set us free? Set us free from what? From who? And I think Jesus would respond the same way he did to his original audience, who were saying, we have never been slaves to anyone or anything. So instead of reading them their national history, he reminds them of their personal history. Jesus replied, verily, truly, I tell you, everyone who sins is a slave to sin. Everyone who sins is a slave to sin. Everyone.
Lying is a sin. And lying to yourself is also a sin. And they were like, hold on, Jesus. We're talking about sin? I thought we were talking about something else. And Jesus says, hey, have you ever done what you shouldn't do? And they were like, yeah. And do you regret what you did? They're like, yeah. And have you got upset at you for doing something you shouldn't do? Yeah. And you say to yourself, I can't believe I did that. Yeah. Who made you do that? And why do you keep doing that? And why have you been doing that over and over again? What's wrong with you? Sounds like you're a slave to me. And they were like, oh, well, there's that. And Jesus says, that's my point. That's exactly my point. You've deceived yourself into thinking that you are far more free than you really are because you hid behind your excuses. And Jesus says, I am the light of the world. I'm inviting you. I'm not forcing you. I'm inviting you to be and participate in something bigger, in a bigger way of living. And then Jesus said this, so if you follow me, if you really embrace my teaching, and if you allow me to set you free, he says, so if the Son sets you free, you will be free indeed. If you allow me to light up your lives and believe me, you will be free indeed. And you'll be free to move forward in your life. You'll be free to get behind your paper walls. You'll be free to actually get rid of your becauses and your excuses. And you'll be free to move forward in your life and live the way God has called you to live. Because following Jesus will make your life better. And following Jesus will make you better at life. Because he is the light of the world. And he's come to light up all of our personal darknesses. And he will make your life better. And he will light up your life if you decide to truly follow him. And the invitation to you today is this. Would you lean in and would you choose to follow Jesus? Not just sit in a pew, not just sing songs about him, not just say, I believe in you, Jesus, but do your own thing, but actually choose to follow Jesus, who is going to be able to lead you out of darkness into light. He's going to lead you through to acknowledge your fear, your insecurity, and to be free to see what the people around you see in you that you can't see. And more importantly, to engage. Because our excuses excuse us from engaging with others and our faith community. Another way of saying this is paper walls make you small. They give you excuses. Paper walls keep you from loving other people as well. Let me give you a different perspective. Isn't it true that the people who hurt you, isn't it true that the people who mistreated you, isn't it true the person who lied to you, who left you, who abandoned you, who abused you, who took advantage of you, every single one of them had a reason for what they did? Yeah? Every single one of them manufactured an excuse for what they did. Every one of them said, this is the reason why I did this. This is the reason. And some of them used you as the reason. But it was just an excuse for them to behave in a fashion that they wanted to. And they couldn't see it. And the reason why they never admitted to it, and because they genuinely couldn't see it, because they created a paper wall, they created an excuse, and they defended the way they behaved. The way they mistreated you, the way they mistreated your spouse, your kids, your friends. So here's an honest question. Do you want to be like that? Do you want there to be people in your world who have been so hurt by you that when it comes to mind, you go, of course I did that. Of course I responded that way. Of course I said that. Of course I lost my temper because of what they said, because of how they acted, because of what they did, because you can't see you. And here's a scary thought. If you can't see that you're wrong, you will be wrong your entire life. If you can't see how you act, what you do, how you live, how you behave, you'd be wrong your entire life, which means you can excuse your life away, you can excuse your bad habits away, you can excuse your health away, you can excuse your family away, you can excuse your peace away, and you can excuse your faith away. If you don't get to this place where His light lights up your life, you will live your entire life thinking you're right and not seeing the truth. You'll live your entire life in darkness and never see the light. But there is a better way. Jesus said, I am the better way. I am the way. I am the truth. And I am the light. And that's why I am the life. Because Jesus invites us to follow Him through darkness and into light. So listen closely to what Jesus says. He didn't say, whoever believes in me. He doesn't say, whoever likes me, whoever admires me, whoever does good things, who shows up consistently. No, He says, whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but have the light of life. Do you know what this looks like? This is what it looks like. I'm going to begin by looking in the mirror and seeing what's wrong with me. And then I'm going to admit I'm afraid, I'm insecure, and it would be terrifying, but you will be free. Don't you want to be free from the things that hold you down? Don't you want to be free from the weight of those excuses and lies that put you in places that you shouldn't be and you miss out on opportunities? It's so constricting, right? Don't you want to be free from the things that keep you down, that hold you back? Isn't that how you want to live? Isn't that how we all want to be? And here's Jesus' invitation, and it's so powerful. If you hold to my teaching, you are really my disciples. And then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. You will have to have some tough conversations with yourself. You have to acknowledge there's some things that I've been hiding from myself and the others, but on the other side of this, you'll be free to see. And you will be the man or the woman, the husband or the wife, the sibling, the daughter, the son, the grandfather, the grandmother that God meant you to be. And not fill your life with excuses. So is it possible that you're missing out because you have walled yourself in? Consider this. All this time it's just been excuses that are masquerading as becauses and reasons. Will you just admit that some of these things have just been paper walls that don't hold any weight, that you've put up and kept yourself behind? Follow Jesus. Jesus invites you. He invites all of us to leave our fact-free excuses behind and to face up to the liberating truth that can set us free. To leave our attitudes, to leave our fears, to leave our insecurities, our lies, our manufactured reasons, our past behind. And Jesus says, if you will allow me to set you free, you will be free indeed. You know what that means, free indeed? That no matter what anyone else does to you or treats you, they will never force you to live behind paper walls, because you will know the truth, and the truth would have set you free. So Jesus says, will you follow me from your darkness into my light? And we'll conclude next week. But before we do, I have two questions. Don't miss next week. It's our epic conclusion. Number one, the reason we ask you these questions is that you can go home and you can think about it, maybe talk about it with your loved one, maybe talk about it to yourself in the mirror. But ask yourself this question so you can actually follow Jesus. Are you willing to admit what you've come to suspect, that some of your excuses are just paper walls? Do you have the courage to admit? To look in the mirror and say, I admit, some of my so-called reasons, some of my becauses, they're just excuses. And they've just been holding me back. They're not allowing me to fill my true potential, to be who I'm supposed to be. So are you willing to admit? Are you willing to look in the mirror and have an honest conversation with yourself? And say, some of these things are actually just paper walls. Number two, what can you do this week to help yourself come out from behind your paper walls? What can you do? Maybe you have an accountability partner, and maybe you talk to someone you trust and love, and they hold you accountable, and they call you out, like we talked about last week. When you actually make excuses and they know you're making excuses, and you say, that's such an excuse. Stop it. Take that opportunity. Live that potential. Be what God called you to be. Stop running from things you shouldn't be running from. Have someone speak truth to you, because that's what Jesus would do. So think about that this week. And don't miss next week as we conclude. But before we do, I'm going to pray for you. Because I know it's easy to look at other people, but it's hard to look at ourselves. It's hard to look in the mirror and admit when we're wrong. But God says in His scripture that the scripture is like a mirror. we should look into it and let it examine us and reflect. Do we reflect who we call ourselves? Are we actually following Jesus? Or we just say that we are and do what we want? Because you'll never be free until you actually follow Jesus and abide by his teaching and abide by what he says. And then, conditional, then you will know the truth and it will set you free.
Thank you for joining us today at Transform Church. We hope that you were encouraged by the message, and we are so grateful that you have spent this time with us. Now, if you've decided to follow Jesus or just have some questions, please get in touch with us using the email address shown below. We would love to guide you as you take these important steps. If you would like to visit us in person, we would love to meet you. Just let us know when you will be joining us, and we will be here with open arms to welcome you and show you around. We hope you will consider supporting us, and we would greatly appreciate your financial support to help us to continue bringing you these messages. Please type in the link shown below into your web browser, and it will provide you with all of our giving options. It's been awesome having you here with us, and we hope to see you soon again. Don't forget to apply what you have learned today and come back and let us know how this has helped you. It's bye for now, and we hope you have an amazing week. See you next time.